Hello and welcome to Women in ERP. I'm Abigail Allman.
And I'm Steph Poor.
And this is episode 9. And today we are joined by Chris Gabriel, the CSO for Sapphire Systems. Hi, Chris.
Hi, both.
Nice to have you with us today.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Chris all about his sort of 7 degrees of separation thought process a little bit later. But first, we'll just have a little catch up. Steph, you've been on holiday again.
I have, yeah, again. Last year I hardly had a holiday. This year I've just come back from Antigua, so I'm very, very lucky. But yeah, I feel like it's been a couple of weeks since we last caught up. So, there's been a lot going on. But yes, I had a wonderful week away and feel fully recharged, ready for the end of the quarter. What about yourself?
Backtrack a little bit before we get into me. So about 3 weeks ago, you won a little award, I believe.
I did, yeah.
Come on.
Salesperson of the year globally for our sales kickoff. So yeah, it was, I believe, the first woman ever to win it as well.
Yes, there you go. Wow, congratulations.
So, yeah, it was a bit of a hectic year last year, in a good way. Obviously, I was very busy, but yes, it just shows hard work does pay off. So,
it does.
All very good.
And you've been rewarded with a trip to Antigua with all the crew, and that was good.
Yeah,
enjoyable.
So, yeah. It was great. It's something a bit strange about being on holiday with a load of colleagues, but by the end it was all fine. And actually some of them are stuck out there because they've caught COVID, so
they can't come
that's
home.
a real shame, isn't it? Like being stuck in Antigua for the next week.
Is it accidentally or on purpose?
Yeah, well, clearly I didn't get the memo. Bit of a shame. But what about you, Abby? What have you been up to?
Oh, just life. So I was just speaking to Chris prior to this. We had sold our house and the buyers have just pulled out. So I'm fuming because England and Wales are the only places on the earth where this is possible and legal. And yeah, they've pulled out. So we've got to find new buyers now. So I'm a bit stressed.
That's a bit of a nightmare. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, definitely. And I finished my coding course. So I did that. So I'm proud of myself.
That's very good.
I'm on my way. I've got the bug for coding, and business wise we've just partnered with Google as well, so I'm really, really pleased with that. We've got some interesting things we're doing with those, so yeah, a lot in the pipeline, which is good. Yeah, so
good.
Right, let's get into it with Chris then. So Chris, let's have a little bit of an overview of who you are and what you do at Sapphire Systems.
I'm one of those of an age that grew up with technology, which makes me feel really old now, but the great home computing revolution of the 1980s, I was part of that. When you used to be dedicated to technology because you had to carry a 28-inch black and white television across town to go to computing club, right? All this, you don't know they're born today in terms of take your phone with you, right? You used to have to carry half your house with you to go and take 6 hours to code something up that didn't work. And then I've been in tech all my career, both in the channel, in the vendor community. And then about 18 months ago, joined Sapphire as the technology strategy officer, which is a bit of a new world for me. Worked in the world of IT operations, technology operations, but not in kind of business operations, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail. So it's been really, everything's much of a muchness, I guess, in the world, but it's been really interesting, really exciting. And my job is just to look at the strategy, how we position ourselves, what we think, how we communicate that, and hopefully, I guess, try and tell stories that resonate with our customers or future customers, which is, I think, the most exciting part of the job. I guess when I say I've been in technology all my life, I've been in and around it. I was talking to someone this morning about having a smart meter installed. So I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to certain things, but I like to think I'm a bit of a storyteller, but we'll find out in the next 30 minutes whether that's true or not as well. So, oh, and by the way, my week, I had my first tattoo ever at the ripe old age of 50 odd. So yeah, that's my last week and a half. So just thought I'd get that in. Just that I've not mentioned it to anybody at all apart from everybody I meet. So I thought I'd get it in there.
What did you have and where?
Yeah. Dangerous question.
Well, actually, no, I had a female tree on my forearm, and I had my my mum's initials and year of birth in the roots, and then my wife and 2 daughters' initials and their dates of birth in the branches. So a little bit of
nice.
so it's kind of a female tree.
Yeah, I don't have any tattoos.
Nor do I. Feels like too much of a commitment for me.
My wife bought it as a Christmas present.
No, that's great. I mean, why not? So that kind of leads us to our next sort of topic of conversation. So we had a chat last week. We have both been through family members living with dementia, and your mum has dementia. And we spoke about this concept of 7 degrees of separation from mum, which is kind of how you approach everything that you do. So if you want to tell our listeners about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, by the way, I didn't have the tattoo just for this webinar to make it relevant, by the way. I'm not that committed. There was a big reason then. No, so it's always fascinated me, is what motivates people to get up and do what we do. And then somebody asked me not so long ago, before we were chatting about it, what gets you excited about what may seem quite mundane things like invoice processing, right, which is fairly mundane, right? Is how do you contextualize that that simple task that you talk to people about a lot, and maybe automating it, which is trying to make it a little bit more efficient, is what how can you get excited about it? Or networking connection, or IoT, and all these kind of technologies. And for me, it's really really simple. Is I try and relate it always back to what the impact of that could be on the people who are most dearest to me. And obviously my mum, and my mum before she had dementia was incredibly special to me. But obviously as you see someone's life change and her reliance on other things and other people change, to me it contextualizes that even more. So I genuinely try and think about it as everything that's out there in some way connects back to the life and the quality of life that my mum can have, and just build concentric circles around that. And I'm really confident that you get to about 6 or 7, and pretty much everything that happens in the world, whether it's farming in different parts of the world, supply chains, whether it's simply getting someone to work on time on a bus, ultimately the butterfly effect makes my mum's life better or worse in some way. And it's not a stretch to do it either, right? I don't kind of work out things in my head. It kind of comes naturally. And I think it's really exciting, right? And if I can relate processing an invoice back to my mum having a nicer life in a care home now, what's not to love about that, right? So I think it's trying to personalize it and conceptualize it. And I think then everybody can understand those stories and hopefully relate those stories back to what they do. And if it's not my mum, it'll be their mum or dad or whoever's the most precious individuals in their life. So
yeah, I mean, it's lovely. It's a lovely way to approach work, and it gives work meaning, which is ideal. We all want that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I had it was interesting. I was talking to a potential customer this morning in the energy sector, just in the office, and he was talking about Big Brother and connected, and what they're, as in what they're trying to do, and the worry that it becomes Big Brother. And I started talking about my mum, and he immediately got it right. And he's like, "No, exactly. That's by being able to give analytics of people how they're using energy in their homes, and we're not an energy provider, we're a service provider, but we're trying to add value through data." And he was immediately going down the path of my mum, and it was like instant connection between what they're trying to achieve as a startup energy firm and one of the recipients of that, which is my mum, right? And it was just it just flowed, right? And you could he lit up and started then getting enthusiastic about what they do, because he saw the personal. Obviously he knew it anyway, but he could immediately relate it. So it was interesting. I was just not using it this morning, but it just came up in conversation.
It's that human side, isn't it? It brings it to, it makes everything more authentic. And I think that's so important. I think it's so easy to kind of lose sight of that, but actually it really does. There's so much benefit in kind of bringing that side of things back into the conversations.
Yeah, and that again, go back to processing the invoice or whatever. That's simple. If I can make that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10% more efficient, more effective, if I can the person who's doing that, I can stop them having to do the drudgery and get them to do something more exciting. And that trickles through that company, that makes them able to service part of the economy better, that trickles through, that ultimately, you know, might put some food on my mum's plate in the care home, or put help one of the people who work there, do make their lives more better, so they go in with a smile in the morning. That all just, you know, you can see all of those connections, and having an influence on those in however, because, you know, we're all little small things at the end of the day, but being able to influence that in some way, for me, is a really big part of going, actually, I do make a bit of a difference, and I, you know, relate it all the way through. So.
It gives work meaning, which is, it's a very difficult thing to do sometimes when you work in ERP, and particularly in the manufacturing sector, for instance. When you're talking ERP, it's all about cost cutting and quality of product, and you actually don't think about all the little, you know, aspects around that, and the people around that as well, you know, ensuring that, you know, Dave on the shop floor gets his invoices done on time, you know, and then he's able to go home and have a nice time with his family. It's like that sort of knock-on effect that
it's quality of life, isn't it? And it's kind of like how you know, those small things, like you say, impact your well-being and mental health and everything like that. So you have a better quality of life if you're, you know, just generally happier, like life's less tough.
We did some research with Cantor a few months ago now, and asked about 1,300 people, it was, across the UK, about how they'd found working from home, but also how they'd found the tools that they were given to work from home. And what was interesting is 9 out of 10 said they'd made a mistake that caused them to be more stressed with work, because they were working they didn't have the tools, or you know, and it was keying data in, sending the wrong invoicing out, and it was the things that people do every day. But what they were able to articulate was that then caused them enough stress for them to remember it, think about it. And I think I said to you, I wake up, apart from my mum, is we can either go to work and try and make other people's lives easier, or we can make them harder. And knowing that someone's gone to bed stressed over not keying an invoice in properly, when that shouldn't be the case, you know, you just go, that's impacted that person's life and therefore their kids. And you know, I think, as you said, we talk about ERP, manufacturing, supply chains, these kind of very kind of, you know, functional things, but actually it's not, it's a human thing at the end of the day. And I think that's the bit that we sometimes, it's easy to forget because you head down in stuff, aren't you? So
yeah, absolutely. Let's have a little chat then about the social impacts of business systems, or ERP systems. How can we make a difference to the world through ERP? It's a big question. Let's see if we can tackle it today.
Well, let me give you my. So I live in Newbury, so I'm in London now, and I probably went through at least 5 ERP systems to get here today, in terms of my parking, my train ticket, buying a coffee, walking into the Shard, and that operating well, because obviously sitting behind those security guards and the reception and the lift. So I touched at least 4 or 5 ERP systems and other systems today that work reasonably well. Payment system as well, so that's another one somewhere. And if you think about life's just one load of transactions after another, right? Is up back of those is business operations, and if they work well, stuff flows well, and if they work not so well, stuff flows not so well, and it's those mini frustrations in life. And then at a transactional level, at that level, and then at a big macro level, I think ERP for many companies, if you add all the ERPs up in the UK, the economic impact they generate and manage, and if we can make every ERP system 3 to 5% more efficient across every company in the UK, what that would do in terms of GDP and economic impact, and therefore profitability and ability to invest in schools and all the public. So you just that alone, you go,
so true.
That's not a bad thing, is it? That's not a bad thing to be working and being able to achieve.
No, it isn't. So it's improving efficiency largely then, isn't it? Making an ERP more efficient. Now, how do we do that? Is it through, you know, other technologies, introducing companies to different technologies? But then there's a spend for that, isn't there? Like how do people work with what they've got to improve life as we know
Yeah,
it.
it's refining processes as well. Quite often, you know, like you say, that 3 to 5% improvement can just be, do you really need to do all these extra steps, or can that just be? So that there's that side of it. And then there's also the sustainability angle as well. So, you know, how do we make businesses more sustainable, whether that be through, you know, making it easier for them to build long-term partnerships with their own customers, but also, you know, you look at carbon footprints and things like that, and kind of recording that side of it. So there's a few angles that you can kind of look at when it comes to ERP. And
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, ERP runs the world around us, right? We did another bit of research around maturity adoption earlier on this year, about 65 companies, so not, you know, but really in-depth study. And most companies still think they're in the basic to moderate use of their ERP system. And they'd like to be in the moderate to advanced within the next 2 years, and then they'd like to be hyper advanced in the next 5 years. But it's really interesting, isn't it, how it's the engine room of most businesses' operations, but most companies still think they're using it in a basic to moderate way, and they would love to get more from it. I was talking to one of our customers who do tableware for pubs and restaurants and cruise ships and Antigua, probably. They were saying that if they can improve every shipment of their goods in by 4 to 5% in terms of utilization, the stock, they can improve their cash flow by 16 to 18%. Wow. That's phenomenal, right? That's game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a game changer. And the data, it's in there. The data's in there. The ability to do that is in there somewhere. It's giving them the tools to unlock it and make deliver the value to their business. So I mean, it is a really. I've not been in this game a huge amount of time, but it's really easy to get excited about what you can do, and then I think our job is to help organizations unlock that potential in a system. And the bit that frustrated me when I joined this industry, by the way, I apologize, is with system of record. It drove me nuts. I'm going, people say, oh, we do systems of record. I mean, is that it? It's like a diary, right? It's a bit like, you know, it's a bit like saying, I said once to a few people, I said, look, if I give you $1 in 2000 and you could invest it in 2 systems of record, you got a choice. One is a leather-bound diary system of Italy's most exclusive diary and filofax company. The other system of record is Facebook. Where would you put your money, right? Because Facebook's just a system of record, right? It's collaboration and connection. So it's really interesting how, but we're still, if we're still in that moderate, if customers still think they're only in a moderate or basic use of a system that runs their business, that's quite an interesting statistic about what we maybe what we're not talking to them about, or maybe what we could be talking to them about.
Yeah, it's heart and lungs of a business, the ERP, and I think I see it time and time again. Certainly some of our customers, they don't recognize the data that's at their fingertips, because they're not accessing it in the right way, and therefore they're not able to make business critical decisions or directions, strategies, whatever it is, based on actually the information that's in the system, which it blows my mind. And just these, like you say, they don't even have to be big tweaks, small tweaks that maybe it's an extra report that tells them whatever they need to know to make that decision. It's
on a gold mine, and
totally.
Not realizing it. Yeah.
I think you mentioned, I mean, sustainability. Obviously, we did some thought leadership piece, and if you look at so it's interesting. If you look at making tax digital, which connects your payroll to the government, I was talking to sustainability thought leader. We were just chit-chatting about, by the end of this decade, our ERP systems will be connected to the government for sustainability measurement, right? We know it's coming, right? We know it's coming. It may not be by the end of this decade, but it's not going to be far away where, we'll be reporting.
And so are the tax hikes as well, based on, your carbon footprint.
All of that, absolutely. And if you've got an inefficient supply chain, you've got an inefficient warehouse, you've got an inefficient production system, it's going to be, at some point, somebody's going to want to look at it, and they're probably going to want to do it in real time. And it may not be in the next 8 years, but it's certainly not going to be much later than that, because they know the data's in there. And if they know the data's in there, we know the data's in there. So it's really interesting how it is that. I think I love the heart and lungs. It's absolutely that. But it also should be the brain as well, I guess. And I think
that's true.
People maybe aren't thinking that it's also the brain.
Yeah, very true.
So we have just teamed up with a company called PX3, and they're data scientists and sustainability scientists. And they go into organizations and they'll look at the ERP. Well, we're doing a piece at the moment, a study around ERP, but they'll look at the IT department and how sustainable the IT department is, and they'll offer suggestions as to how to improve that. There's lots of things that you can use around automation and ancillary softwares to help boost ERPs. Is there any that you have noticed at the moment, Chris, that you're like raving about? Any products out there that people listening might be able to take advantage of?
We are doing a lot with the core authors around the stuff that's coming from them natively, which I think is really exciting. I won't mention any authors' names. But I think they've all figured out that they need to be all over it. So we've been trialing some standardized sustainability dashboards. We built some bots that sit around that, so some automation RPA bots that go. So we're actually building our own now to help our ESG person here collect all of her sustainability data that she needs every month and every quarter, because be honest, it's a bit of a nightmare, right? Going into expense systems, going into finance systems, going into so we're building an eco bot that's going to go and create her ESG submission to our group function, our private equity function once a month and every quarter. So that's really interesting to me, is using automation to do some of these really important but still fairly repetitive tasks. And however much you'll get, data science into a data science engine, you still got to get it back out and then do something with it. So combination of automation, data, workflow is really exciting for us. So yeah, and then we're actually doing a lot of work with customers. So it's really interesting. So I was down on a farm a couple of weeks ago, where they're doing fugitive methane capture to turn farms into off-grid, and that's all. It's a sustainability business, but need all of that sustainability insights and data to effectively run their business in a sustainable way. So it's quite interesting now that becomes quite important for them.
Yeah, they're like cutting edge, aren't they? I know the ones that you're talking about, and I
got on a tractor. I was on a tractor for the first time in my life. 2 tractors in a day. That was a bit. I've never been on before. Got on 2 in a day, and too many pasties. But no, it's really really interesting.
We're definitely seeing a trend towards that as well. Even some of the big energy company, everything's renewables, everything's kind of, as obviously an author of software, we've got sustainability modules coming through and all that kind of stuff. So I think everyone knows it's the future, as we've just said. So I think there's a lot still to come. It's quite an exciting space to be in, I guess, at the minute.
Yeah, and I was going to say the other bit we're really focused on is skill sustainability as well. I know it's a slight, but we talk about automation and RPA, and you can take a dystopian or a utopian view of that. I think we discussed it. Stopping people from doing repetitive tasks all day long, especially when they can make mistakes, is a great, giving everybody. I would give everybody in the NHS a digital assistant. I'd give every school teacher a digital assistant, right? Why are we forcing people to do repetitive tasks that could be done in a digital way, but really augment the human capital that we've got in the country? But we're also looking at what that might do in offsetting skills and jobs as a business as well. So we're training. We've got some local schools we work with here. One is primary. In fact, they were all in before Christmas, creating bots. And actually the topic came up of who they could help, and it was Gene. So I had 30 8-year-olds creating Gene bots for the day.
Gene's your mum, right?
Yeah, exactly. So my mum's Gene, yeah. And then we also had an academy, and so 17-year-olds. And what was fascinating, so they all came in to learn to code RPA up, so proper technical couple of days. And their biggest issue that they wanted to talk about was the ethical use of automation and AI, and what that was going to do for jobs and skills. So I also think it's incumbent on us that we invest in sustainability of the environment, but also sustainability of our communities, and create those new jobs. We know we've got a skills shortage in the ERP sector anyway, massively. So how can we
Well, development sector, I mean, moving people, upskilling. Personally, I've just learned how to code myself, and I've found it so therapeutic. And honestly, I relate it to crafts, doing crafts. It's very similar to crocheting. It is. So, you know, if you can crochet, you can code.
Yeah.
And I think it's educating people on how easy it is and how accessible it is to do it.
And I think that's really important to the next generation as well. Like quite often, you know, they are looking at that whole piece, you know, from a business. That it's not like the olden days where you just, you know, you're thankful for the job. It's like, well, what are you doing as a company sustainability wise, or what are you doing? How are you going to help train me? How, you know, the expectations are a lot higher. Well, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, and Steph, we Mark Wheeler, who's our guru here on this stuff, we were chatting last month, and we were saying, and if you imagine, go back to just ERP and finance, and we were talking about, in fact, we're just working on it now, a job description. We write job descriptions of the tasks people are going to do when they get to the office, and I've got to say, they're usually pretty tedious things, right? Imagine writing a finance job description where you were providing them with a robot, an RPA, a digital worker, to do all the drudgery that they do. Now, who are you going to get coming to work for your business, right? So we also think about it in that way is we think about jobs as a set of tasks, and we write. I mean, I've seen some really bad, even recently here, I've seen some really bad job descriptions. You know, they're like 2 pages of the things you're going to have to do. You know, and then you go, no, but I'm going to give you digital. I don't want admin brilliance, because I'm going to get a digital robot to do all that stuff. I don't need to be sitting there processing invoices and opening spreadsheets. I don't want any Excel. You know, how many finance jobs go out with you must have Excel skills on there. Well, I don't need to have any Excel skills, because I don't need to sit in front of Excel all day. I want you to be making decisions around how we're going to manage the business's money, right? But
it's the value add stuff, isn't it? That, you know, you get better quality than candidates, hopefully, and you're not. Yeah, I completely agree with you.
But also,
I'd love a digital assistant right now.
I need one for my life.
House sale bot. Yeah, exactly. But just on that is you know, skill shortages. We're after talent. Is right. You know, you're after talent in any function in a business. Is writing down a load of mundane things somebody's got to do all day long that they don't really need to do, but you just didn't give them the right systems or the right processes or the right tools. It's really weird way of, you know, but we think that way because we've put up with it through our. But your average 17, 18, 20, you know, they're probably going to figure out there's a better way of doing it. So I think that's going to be another thing that we should go back to ERP, and why is it exciting, and what we should be doing is perhaps we should be aligned as much with the HR team as we are with the finance team, right? And being able to demonstrate how we can, you know, modernize systems, but also help them attract talent, how to make sure that they, you know, getting the brightest and the best, because they're recognizing the transformation they're making in some of the things that we do.
Yeah, and maybe making the ERP system more usable. So using tools, you know, things like kiosks and that kind of thing, allowing interaction, allowing easy input of information, easy output of information in appropriate places within the workplace as well. So, you know, your lunch area, having a screen in there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to steal that one. Thank you. But I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? If you go forward 20 years, maybe 15, not 10. There's a thing, hands-free ERP is obviously the thing that's talked about now, is how many people will key into an ERP system in 10 years' time? And I think it will be pretty much virtually zero, right? You won't be keying anything in, you'll be extracting insights out. And therefore, that's the bit that's the next generation of how do I interpret the stuff that's in there, because I ain't going to type anything in ever, because it's all going to be done digitally in some way, isn't it? You know, it's interesting, isn't it?
It blows my mind, because when I first started in marketing, one of my first jobs was like data input. And that won't even exist in the future.
We used to have temps that just loaded data into systems, and like it was nuts.
But that's how far we've come. I mean, everything you do now, it's just like, it's logged, isn't it? It's clocked in.
Well, exactly. I love that example, actually, because that's, you know, the old keying in of data into marketing systems, and and records and keeping updated lists. Now you've got Zoom info, right? Now you just go, tell me all about them, right? And someone's figured out all that for you, right? So we've gone from finding it out and keeping our little system of record to now just going, well, tell me about that business. And, you know, you can literally find out everything you want to know about them through a system that's driven by AI and intelligence.
I mean, LinkedIn, you just put a
yeah,
name
exactly.
in.
No look back. Yeah, exactly.
All the history.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Which is quite scary in a way, because it sort of takes away our freedoms in a way, doesn't it? And it makes everything traceable. And, you know, if you go off to commit some major crime, they're going to find you. Not that any of us want to do that. But yeah.
Insight into your life there, Abby.
You never know. You never know what's coming.
Well, I gotta say, I think it's interesting. I think certainly I've got a 19-year-old and a 18-year-old, nearly 19, a 15-year-old just turned, and they're really wary of, you know, they're very savvy about what social media. In fact, they're not on it particularly. In fact, they're not on it at all, really, because you know what they post. But this whole traceability, transparency, go back to sustainability. You can't greenwash anymore. You won't be able to go, oh yeah, we're really great. Well, no, show me how great you are, and I know you can tell me because it's in your ERP system. So, you know, the whole this whole, you know, system of record to a very transparent model. I think that's the other big thing that's going to be quite exciting for us all to get our heads around. Everything will be transparent, right? And people would expect it. They'll expect transparency rather than this opaque world that maybe we've lived in for the last period.
I like that, because one of the topics I've been talking about recently is greenwashing, and the fact that companies are offsetting their carbon emissions by planting a load of trees. But who looks after those trees? You know, they go ahead and plant them, but then they just die. So what was the point? You know, you aren't actually making a difference. Now that traceability factor, it makes them own it. They've got to be green.
Yeah, exactly. I think that exactly that transparency thing, and for all of us, the big I think driver for us in our industry is it's just going to get more. It's only going one way. Blockchain, you know, and all of that. You know, ignore cryptocurrencies for a second, right? But you know, there'll be no reason why companies can't externalize that information to customers, consumers. Some do it now, but you know, you won't be able to get away with poor wages in a factory somewhere making T-shirts, because everything will be transparent.
Yeah.
You know, and it kind of is already. So I think, but what a great, I think it's a really positive thing, right? I think it's going to be a really exciting kind of next 10 years for our industry, because of what we're going to be driven by, but also what we can do for the economy, and then what we can trickle down all the way to people like my mum, and make people's lives better, right? And I think that's going to be the exciting bit. Again, talking to an energy firm, exactly that conversation.
And how is mum?
She's all right. I phoned her, didn't tell her about my tattoo, and
Will she disapprove?
Yes, I'm telling my brother, yeah, actually, that'll be the one he'll really disapprove. But yeah, no, I mean, she, you know, she doesn't really know who I am anymore. I think we talked about it, didn't we? I mean, the fact that we kept her out of a home for too long, probably, and she became so reliant on people and things around her that those people and those things couldn't cope anymore with what she needed. And the best option, actually, it's best to give her, because she's safe, secure. She's got a family around her, and which is the people who live with her, but also the people who do an amazing job looking after her. But could we have made her life better outside? We could have, and hopefully over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we will do. But no, she's fine. She doesn't know who I am, but anyway, it's not a bad thing. It probably doesn't make her sad that she doesn't remember who people are anymore. So there's a plus side in that as well, isn't there? Right? There's that grey area between the two, probably.
Yeah, you remember her and everything that she's done for you. And
exactly.
That article you wrote, I think a couple of weeks ago, was beautiful. And you are a true credit to her. So it's a horrible disease.
Apart from the tattoo. I'm a geezer now. I'm a geezer now rather than the sunbed. So.
You're going to have to get yourself a Harley Davidson now. And all this.
Yeah, no, that's my midlife. I've gone past my midlife crisis. I think
No, that's brilliant, Chris. We'll let you go now. Thank you so much for joining us. Really interesting conversation, and we'd love to have you back anytime.
No, thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Steph, and thank you for inviting me. Really, a real pleasure.
Thanks, Chris, and also thanks for being the first male.
Yeah.
I am honoured. I'm going to have a tattoo on that one as well. So if you could send me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll be disappointed if you don't.
Bye for now.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.